What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the RPG podcast. Today, we're here to talk about the big guys up front. We're here to talk about the offensive line and how that impacts your fantasy team players' success. All right, so offensive line, when you think about that, you don't really think about upgrading or losing a couple guys there as being extremely significant to your players on your fantasy team because let's be real. We're thinking about the skill position players. We're not thinking about the guys that do the dirty work in the trenches. But they are very important, especially in the run game. That is going to be number one. The position that they impact the most is going to be the running back. The second position they're going to impact is going to be the quarterback. Naturally, if your quarterback's not upright, then, well, you really can't get the ball to the wide receivers or the tight end. So, followed by that, the least impactful for the offensive linemen are going to be the wide receivers and tight ends. So, there's your order: running back, quarterback, then wide receivers and tight ends. Pretty big gap between quarterback and then wide receiver tight ends. Relatively small gap between running backs and quarterbacks. But alas, we're here to give you the 5 worst offensive lines that I have for the NFL for the 2025 season. All right, we're going to start off here talking about the Houston Texans. Oh, man. CJ Stroud. All right, talk about that. Talk about the running game. The fact that Joe Mixon was able to do what he did behind that offensive line last year is incredible, honestly. Now you're looking at CJ Stroud, who I think took over 60 sacks last year, and this offensive line got worse. I mean, they moved on from their star left tackle and Tunsil. They have nobody really to replace him. Cam Robinson is not a replacement. Look, I get it. He's been around the league for a long time. He was a former, day 2 pick. But man, what does he do to inspire confidence? He gives up a bunch of pressures in the pass game. I know PFF has him rated as a 67, but I mean, 67, we're talking pretty dang close to league average, below average run blocker. You look at everybody on this offensive line, below average run blockers. Titus Howard is clearly their best offensive lineman, and they're paying him like their best offensive lineman. They shifted him into guard from where he was originally drafted as a tackle. So put all of that together, what is there to inspire confidence on this offensive line? I mean, it's a giant question mark. Moved on from Tunsil, moved on from Shaq Mason. That was 2 of their top 3 offensive linemen. And instead, in the draft, instead of drafting one of the offensive linemen that they had plenty of shots at, they decided to go with wide receivers. They decided to go other directions, other skill position players that, sure, they're names for fantasy. We would absolutely love names for fantasy. But alas, here we are. CJ Stroud, north of 60 sacks last year, could be pushing north of 60 sacks once again. Joe Mixon has Nick Chubb signed there now. So that's going to eat a little bit into his workload, along with a very poor offensive line. It does not look very good for that team there. And if you go over to ESPN and look at the 2024 pass and run win rates for offensive linemen, so you come on over and you scroll on down to the Houston Texans. All right, right there, 31st. Oh my goodness. All right. Talk about a run block win rate that's just horrendous. 31st in the league and then 22nd in pass block win rate, which, is still bottom third. A little bit better. You can clearly see in the PFF stats that they were a better pass blocking offensive line. Now, remember, all of this was done when they still had Laramie Tunsil and still had Shaq Mason. So, needless to say, I am quite concerned about this offensive line and about the impact that will have on the skill position players. Uh, how much do you guys think that this is actually going to bother them? How much do you think that this is going to actually impact them? Let us know in the comments below. Always appreciate hearing from y'all. But now we're going to move on to the second worst offensive line that I have ranked here. And I still have it as the Giants. Some people are going to argue about this, I'm sure. But the Giants' offensive line, still a brutal unit. So if we start sorting by how many snaps they had, look, one player with over 1,000 snaps. Everybody else, you see only 4 guys with over 800. Okay, so we should be talking something like a Andrew Thomas, John Runyon, John Michael Schmitz, Greg Van Roten, and then Jermaine out at right tackle there. Thank goodness that Evan Neal's not going to be a right tackle. Hopefully they slide him into guard a little bit more, be able to utilize his speed and his power. That would be a really interesting potential upgrade. Greg Van Roten, as I said before, the only guy with over 1,000 snaps. Consistency has been a thing. Older offensive linemen, a little more prone to theoretically breaking down during the season. Oh, man, John Michael Schmitz. Ooh, look at that. 50 pass blocking grade. That's horrendous, folks. That is, tell me you're a turnstile without calling yourself a turnstile. That is just tough. The running game, you're a little bit better. You're maybe right around league average at that high 67, 62 for Greg Van Roten. Man, that interior of the line, John Runyon right there. Oof, yeah, that's another 52. That is bad. That is not good, not what we want to see. And then Evan Neal last year, when he had to step in, you can see he only had 459 snaps. But Andrew Thomas was consistently hurt. You can clearly see Andrew Thomas was their best offensive lineman. That pops right off the page. He is fulfilling his 4th overall draft capital that he got. But how many snaps is he going to be on the field? If he's looking at sub 500 once again, I mean, essentially you're saying he's going to play right around half a season. That's just not going to get it done. Russell Wilson's going to be in trouble. Any running backs are going to be in trouble when you start looking at that. So you would be talking, a Scadaboo and a Tracy. Will Russell Wilson, will Jackson Dart have enough time to be able to get the ball out to their wide receiver playmakers to be able to not let it impact them too much? That'll be the question for this coming season. Hopefully, Daboll can be able to scheme up some plays to be able to utilize that. So now we're going to move over there to ESPN again and go look at that hit rate, be able to try and see what's going on. We got the New York Giants right down here at the bottom. We got 26th in pass blocking win rate. We got 27th in run blocking win rate. I mean, that's tough considering that a lot of starters are returning. That's tough considering that you can't really project a bump forward for Andrew Thomas. Yeah, it's a major question mark. The interior of the offensive line is a major question mark. So all of that to be said, I think the Giants are one of the worst in the league. All right, now we're going to go over to the third worst that I have, which is going to be the Miami Dolphins. Go back to PFF. All right, we got PFF back up here. Now, this offensive line lost Teron Armstead during this past offseason. Huge blow. I mean, he was the clear best player on this offensive line. Now that best player is going to be Aaron Brewer at the center position. You look at Brewer, and Brewer came through for them. Eichenberg was an absolute mess at guard for them last year. You just really hope that Eichenberg isn't going to have to play much, which hopefully that's why they drafted their rookie, Jonah. I can't even think to pronounce his last name. So out of Arizona, if I remember correctly. You got Patrick Paul, who's supposed to be taking over for Teron Armstead. You do not like having to start Patrick Paul at this point. It's a small sample size. I get it. 338 snaps logged. But that is not room for excitement. Yes, he was taken in 2024, so hopefully he will be taking a step forward. But will he? Then you run over to James Daniels, who was incredibly, valuable to the Steelers' offensive line before he got hurt, before he ruptured the Achilles. And that's what he's coming back from, is a ruptured Achilles. So how quickly will he be back to what he was before? That is the question for this offensive line. Obviously, Tua needs to be upright to be able to distribute to the playmakers. If he can't be upright and he's going to continuously be hit and put on his backside, one, you wonder about Tua and how many hits he can handle. Two, you look at it and you say, man, maybe he's not going to be able to get the ball to the distributors. Austin Jackson out there at tackle, very, very low average tackle for the league. So I think the Dolphins gave to us somewhere around 2.5 seconds to throw last year, which if you've ever sat in one place for 2.5 seconds and then had a body coming at you, it's not fun. You're going to start to get some happy feet. So all of that brings into some question how Tua is going to be able to handle this 2025 season and the playmakers for this offense. Once again, you go back to Achane and what the offense was doing with him. They had to use him in the dump off game. They had to use him in the short area pass game because of the fact that they had to get the ball out so dang quickly. All right, you go to the Dolphins and you get a pass block win rate of 28th and you get a run block win rate of 26th. Whew, man, that's just not going to get it done. That is tough to operate an offense in. This is definitely not the offensive line that we saw in 2023, where they absolutely took off. This offense was humming. It was looking like a juggernaut in the making. So all of those things to be considered. The Dolphins are listed as my third worst offensive line. All right, we're going to move over now to the fourth worst that I have, the 29th ranked offensive line. And we're going to go with the Cincinnati Bengals here. All right, I get it. Joe Burrow is elite. He is a magician. What Joe Burrow does with the amount of time and the security that this offensive line gives him is nothing short of a miracle. Like, it makes no sense because going left to right, you're probably talking Orlando Brown Jr. You're probably talking Dylan Fairchild, who is going to be a rookie. You're probably talking Ted Karras right there. You're probably talking Lucas Patrick right there. And then you're probably talking Amarius Mims. Mims needs to take a major step forward. If Mims does not take a major step forward and Fairchild does not show up as a rookie, this offensive line is in bad shape because you do not want Volson starting. You do not want Cody Ford starting. But once again, Orlando Brown Jr. and Amarius Mims have also had injury issues. That's why Cody Ford had to step in last year. It's not a situation that you want to see. Chase is amazing. All right. Higgins is really good when he's on the field. Joe Burrow, absolute magician. Chase Brown, did a lot with what he was given. Now, do I think that there's some offseason moves that they made that are going to impact him? Sure. But this offensive line, they needed to invest and invest again and invest again in this offensive line. And instead, they chose to go to the defense, which I understand. Their defense was pretty rough. But this is an offensive line that can pass block, is horrible as a run blocking unit. So Chase Brown's going to have to make his hay in the receiving game and also be able to just make something out of nothing when they get him in the running game. All right, now we go over to ESPN again. Look at some win rates here. We got the Cincinnati Bengals. We got 32nd in pass blocking win rate, and we got 30th in run blocking win rate. And you're going to tell me that they return almost the entire offensive line that they had last year? That does not sound like a recipe for success. That is very concerning. Fairchild is a fantastic addition for this team, but he can only do so much without the rest of them taking a step forward and having a much better season. It could be a rough year for that Bengals offense. All right, going now to the final team on our list of the 5 worst offensive lines. We're going to go with the New England Patriots. They made very big strides this offseason with going out and getting Morgan Moses. That was huge. With going out and getting Garrett Bradbury, that was huge. With drafting Will Campbell, I understand some think that he's going to move into guard at the NFL level. Right now, he's a tackle. They're going to see what they got at the tackle position for him. So, yeah, let's keep all of that in mind. A lot of new pieces, but you can see Bradbury easily their best run blocker that they're going to have to be able to work with. So hopefully he can open up some holes up the middle. You got Big Mike there at guard, was their best offensive lineman last year, which is tough considering that he's only got a 71 and a 57 run blocking grade there, 71 pass blocking grade. Hopefully Drake May can stay upright. Hopefully he can have some time to be able to throw the football. Jacobs, you knew you did not want him starting again. He was absolutely horrendous. You wanted nothing of that. Lowe, you have that as a backup tackle. That is a much better position to be in. Morgan Moses, as I said, they added him. He's on his last legs in the NFL, but he can still provide valuable snaps for you out at tackle to not let Drake May get absolutely just slaughtered in that backfield. And then Cole Strange, hopefully, is able to put it together finally after Bill Belichick took him in the first round a couple years back now. He was a horrendous run blocker last year, but pass blocking, he was able to hold his own, according to PFF here. So that's encouraging that he is able to be taking a next step for this team. All right, so finally, we're going to go over one last time to ESPN and the win rates here. We're going to look at the New England Patriots, and we're going to see, oh my gosh, 31st in pass blocking win rate, 32nd in run blocking win rate. No wonder Drake May had to run for his life last year. No wonder Drake May had so many rushing yards. That is just absolutely horrendous. They needed to invest heavily in this offensive line. They gave it a chance. All right. They did. They put in very high draft capital. They added some free agent dollars to this offensive line. So it should be improved. Pair that with Mike Vrabel and his system and how he likes to utilize his team. Maybe there's a chance that this offensive line takes a step up, and I'm just a little low on it because I haven't seen it yet. Well, everybody, we greatly appreciate you jumping in for another episode of the RPG podcast. And with that, I think we're out of here. Have a good day.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Fantasy Football RPG Podcast. If you made it this far, be sure to like and subscribe. If you want to check out written content, head over to lastwordonsports.com.
Don't let the goblins get you.